Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you guys are. Welcome to Plungecast and welcome to Plunge Pop, where we talk entertainment, creativity, pop culture with creatives in the entertainment fields such as sci-fi, fantasy, uh, sometimes even music. And we look at podcasters as well as the different things they do. Whereas today I've got Jeffrey, who does a lot of different things. Mr. Morris, of course, you guys are new to him, but he's known as Future Dude Entertainment online, and he's writing a book. He's done short films. He's getting ready to do a feature film based on one of the short films. The short film has been turned into adapted by Kevin Sullivan, who's well-renowned fantasy writer and sci-fi writer. I think it's mainly sci-fi, but I'm sure Jeffrey would tell us more about that. Into a book, into a novel, which we're discussing today, adapting a script into that, also working on the film project as well. So, Jeffrey, would you like to give us a quick bio about yourself, and for people who haven't know much about you at the moment?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm a writer, director, production designer. My focus is really hard science fiction. I'm a big fan of doing things that are based on real science and physics. And I follow what I call the 85% rule, where I try to get all my science and engineering about 85% plausible in any story that I create, and with the goal of telling realistic stories about the future. And it's a big deal. And so I have a production company called Future Dude Entertainment. The name Future Dude came from a blog that I did that was popular back around 2012 or so, and decided to go ahead and rename my company around it. And we do graphic novels and films and all kinds of different stuff. So, but currently developing this project called Persephone. So, yeah, which is about a journey to the nearest star.
Awesome. I love we discussed this before, but the whole 85% rule, we don't see that in entertainment now, right? We don't see a lot of that. We see just slightly. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we see a bit of it. Do you think that it's because a lot of people who actually write that are not interested in actually research, or they just want to,
Well, that's an interesting thing. I've actually heard that there are a number of Hollywood productions that'll take on advisors, science and technical advisors. But then what I'll hear is that they'll get the advice and then they don't follow it. So because what will happen is the advisor will tell them, hey, here's the reality of what it is, and they'll quite often go, well, I don't want to do that. That sounds boring, or that's not as cool, so they don't really follow the advice. The problem is, it's interesting. I actually think, personally, I believe that it takes more creativity to stay within the bounds of reality than it does to just make anything up you want. And now it's funny because I think a lot of people think the opposite. They think it's creative to just make up anything. But to me, to say, all right, I want to actually put some guardrails on this and say, what actually can be done within the realms of realm of reality, or at least reality as we know it at present, right? I mean, there's obviously science will change, and things will change, and physics will change, and technology will change, engineering, all those things are evolving. But so that means whatever we see as being the limits of our current world, 50 years from now, those limits may be very, very different. 100 years from now, be very different. So I acknowledge that, but there's still physics, right? There's still the possibilities of physics, and there's a difference between real physics and just sort of magical things, magical storytelling. So, and that's fantasy, right? It's like, at the end of the day, Star Wars, a lot of people call it sci-fi, but if you really take the root of the term science fiction is, fictional stories, narratives based upon some semblance of the realities of science, right? And Star Wars doesn't really have any of that in there. It's really it's a fantasy. I call it a space fantasy, right? Yeah. And there's other types of fantasies too, like technological fantasies, different sorts of things. And some of the stories I've done, I would call techno fantasies, right? But I have a love of hard science fiction. I think it's got a real, I think there's a huge potential there that's not being exploited.
Mm. I'm kind of reminded, like, I just saw a news item recently about where you can put a chip in your hand, right, to carry data and so on. But when you look at Johnny Mnemonic, way back, I think early or late 80s or early 90s,
It was early 90s, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you had that where you could, store storage on your brain and you could walk around with it. I
yeah.
remember writing a short story way back in like about 94 or something,
Mhm.
because because I'd seen it, right? And I thought, well,
Yeah.
what if you uh actually smuggle drugs that way? There was some hyper, more sort of like technical drug that you could use that was more, you could go through customs without people knowing it, because your body is now more not AI, sorry, cybernetic. So if you got like a metal arm, nobody would notice a metal piece of uh, something, some chemical inside a metal thing.
Mhm.
And so we when you're looking at it now, like it's that sort of like speculative fiction based on science is now catching up with us, and now
Oh,
we've got
absolutely.
AI
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. But if you were to go back in time, a lot of those authors, they're doing research, right? They're actually going and talking
Yeah.
to, someone might have talked to a neuroscientist or to to people who are trying to figure out this sort of cybernetic
Mm,
interactions, that sort of thing, right? That research existed for decades.
yeah.
It wasn't as far along as it is now, but it was definitely something that people have been talking about for a long time
Mm,
and researching. So I mean, I think the information's there. The question is, you watch a movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's based upon, to a large degree, what they knew at the time.
yeah.
We actually know quite a bit more than then,
Mm,
right? So to me, that would mean we could have even more accurate depictions of being in space and that sort of thing. Now, that said, I think having good human real dramas, real stories is what's most
mm,
important, right? All I'm saying is it's kind of neat to have the backdrop for those human stories, which is the most important part. Have
yeah.
that be something that could really happen.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah. Mhm.
That's what I liked about Oceania, your short film, and the interaction between the two main characters in it, and it was more about people, and then
Yeah.
the chaos of the story, or the plot made it more special, because you kind of felt like you cared about the people in it, rather than just, oh, it's another little entertaining thing
Right.
tagged on with, like, in the sci-fi genre. And I think that's something really cool to enjoy. A lot of times, like last night I was watching a horror movie, right,
Mm.
Sister Death, and it was all like, okay, the weird things are happening, and then suddenly it became very human,
Mm.
and I was like tearful, because it became really human. I was like, now I could actually. It became more than just, hey, it's scary jump scenes and all this
Mhm.
creatures, whatever, and now just you weren't expecting it, and it suddenly
Right.
dropped in. You went like, why is all this crazy stuff happening? And then you realize there was a human element to it, and I was like, why has this movie got such a low rating? People missed the whole,
That's the
the
point of
human
it.
side of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think it's interesting you say that. I mean, I think that you kind of have to have a savvy audience in order
Mm,
um, to really take advantage of this kind of stuff. You have to have an audience that actually wants that sort of thing. Now, I believe that there are millions of people around the world who do want to see um, hard sci-fi. Just like I'm not a big horror guy, but I'll tell you this: if I were going to watch a horror film or
mm,
a thriller of that type, I would want it to be some reason, like something of some substance to it, other than just
yeah.
here's an excuse to just have a bunch of gore and violence, right? That sort of thing, to
Yeah.
actually have something there where there's a point. And I think that's the same thing that I'm trying to do with science fiction.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
And it's been very successful in the way that people actually are enjoying the stories and stuff, which brings us to Persephone, and your project right now. Now let's talk about, like, I mean, a lot of people like go from like novel to maybe short film and then to a feature, where you've gone actually the other way. Tell us, what was the reason behind that, or is there something
Well,
else
I
that
think, I
you
mean,
want to do?
first and foremost, this was developed as I've been developing this as a feature film since 2017, fall of 2017. That's when I
Okay.
first had the idea for it. And I wanted to tell the story of people traveling to the nearest star. And what we did is when I started creating this project, it's been through many iterations, but around 2020, I ended up working with Kevin Anderson. And Kevin is he's well known for writing the Dune novels. He's done he did all like I think like 17, 18, 19 prequels to Dune.
Wow.
I mean, it's really, really amazing. He also has worked in Star Wars universe. He's worked in X-Files, and he's got a bunch of original novels he's written himself. So
Yeah.
He's won a bunch of awards for some of the graphic novels he's done recently, things like that. So Kevin's amazing. He's really great. So Kevin and I developed a friendship, and I was kind of it was right. It was during the pandemic era, so the project had kind of we were close to getting it into production, and we were actually going to shoot it in Utah, and the pandemic really derailed our financing, and the whole thing kind of fell apart. And during that phase, I decided I wanted to kind of tweak the script and work on it, and Kevin and I met, and so we decided to collaborate some, and so he gave me some notes on the script, and he became a part of the story development team there. And then by the fall of 2021, it was like, hey, Kevin, we've got a good script here. Would you be interested in turning this into a book? You're a novelist. And he's like, yeah, it's a good idea. So he took the screenplay and turned it into this novel. And the issue with this is the movie itself really focuses on about 4 days of the lives of the main characters as they arrive at this planet. What Kevin does is, he and I mapped out an entire sort of backstory that goes back to why did they leave Earth? How did they leave Earth? How did they do this whole thing? How did this happen? And their lives and everything. So that's a big part of what the novel is. Now subsequently, I've rewritten the script. I've done what they call a page 1 rewrite on the script, and that had to do with financing and understanding sort of the needs of the industry now. And so the movie that you're going to end up seeing is it's going to have the same basic flow and structure, but it's going to be different than what's in the novel. But that's very typical. The novels and films can be very different. But I think this is a really great snapshot into the world of the story that I want to tell. So,
yeah, I mean, for those people who are just watching for the first time, don't know what the story is about, do you want to give us a little overview of the story?
Yeah. So I wanted to tell a story about. So Alpha Centauri system. It's a triple star system. It's the closest star system to our own, and it's about 4.5 light years away. And I've always found it fascinating. There are 2 stars there, Alpha Centauri A and B, which are closer to being it's closer to our sun, right? And then there's a 3rd star, which is Proxima Centauri, which is smaller. It's a red dwarf star, which orbits the other 2. So yeah, and this is you're showing a video, kind of behind the scenes video we put together about the project a couple of years back. So, but anyway, there's another one you might want to find, which is the previs. There's a Persephone previs. Yeah, if you're going to show one, it's the previs one. Anyway, where was I on this? So, the idea was that climate change, there's a something they call the tipping point, which is where climate change we may end up with a runaway greenhouse effect. And I know there's a lot of politics around climate change, and a lot of people don't want to deny it and whatever it is. But the issue is this: it's nothing political about it. It's at the end of the day, when you burn billions of tons of carbon, fossil fuels, carbon dioxide, and you pump that into a closed environment, it retains heat. And we have some things going on up at the poles where they have something called permafrost up there. Which holds massive amounts of methane. So the idea is that if this methane gets released, we could be in a position where there's absolutely nothing we could do to reverse it, to slow it down, reverse it. So this is that worst case scenario. What if that happens? And then say we haven't built an infrastructure on any of the other planets in the solar system or anything like that, and we need to travel somewhere else to try to see if we can establish a foothold. The issue with in 2016, a planet was discovered orbiting Proxima Centauri, and they call it Proxima b. And I thought it'd be really interesting to tell a story about traveling to Proxima B. So what you're seeing here, production, as I started developing the script, I did production design work. So I was literally designing spaceships and stuff and vehicles at the same time as working on the script. But this is what the vision of what Proxima B would look like. And we currently have Brianna Hildebrand from Deadpool Films is cast in the film, along with Ming-Na Wen.
She's amazing. Yeah,
and also Isai Morales. So this is some of the behind the scenes art we created for the project. So what happens is when the colonists arrive at the planet, so what's happened is components of their colony have been sent in advance. So these components were all pre-sent and landed and created robotically and that sort of thing. Now, Proxima Centauri in real life is a flare star. So it's a star that puts off massive amounts of radiation. So there's a real concern that even though this planet orbits in what's called the Goldilocks zone, which is kind of the place where liquid water could exist on its surface, like the Earth. And by the way, Proxima B is also it's a little bit bigger than larger than the Earth, which means slightly higher gravity. And these are all things that are going to play into the story. So, but the issue is there's the concept is there's something on the planet that the colonists didn't expect, and they had created a shield system that was deflecting some of the star's radiation, which was going to make the planet livable. When they get there, the shield's not working. So they send down an engineer. They bring her out of hibernation because the ship has taken over 50 years to get there, and the majority of the 10,000 colonists have been in hibernation. So this person who is being played by Ming, she's an engineer who was part of the team that designed the shield. So they wake her up and they send a mission down to the planet early in order to try to discover what's wrong and try to get the shield back online. And they are actually, she's flown to the planet by a couple of young people who were actually born on board the ship. So, and there really weren't supposed to be people born on the ship, but what happens is the captain of the ship, who, due to some unfortunate circumstances, the crew was supposed to be in rotation, the crew that was maintaining the ship. For some reason, he ends up in a bad situation where he has to stay awake the entire time.
Oh, wow.
So he and his wife, decide to stay up, and they have a kid and things like that. And so there are a couple kids that are actually been trained to fly the spacecraft, things like that. So you get these two young people who have never, ever been to Earth, three young people, actually. And then this woman who's just come from Earth that was really devastated by this whole disaster, climate change disaster. So she has a very different perspective. So for these kids, their entire future was forward. For this woman, her everything's about kind of getting away from the past, right? So they have very, very different views. So when they arrive at the planet and they discover what has actually caused the problem with the shield, the two groups have very different reactions to it. And so what I really wanted to do was create this sort of morality play where the woman who was born on Earth is like, we can't be going out into the universe making the same kind of mistakes we made on Earth. And the kids are kind of like, well, but we got to live on that planet. There's no turning back. There's nowhere else to go. What are we supposed to do? And so this is what it's a drama. There's a lot of action and adventure in the film. It's not a there are a couple explosions in it and things like that, but it's not about guns. It's not about lightsabers. It's not about battles. This is my 2001: A Space Odyssey, 21st century. That's what this film is all about.
It's kind of like a battle of wills between the old and the young, and especially if you've seen something devastating like that in the past, and you bring that to and you try to not make the mistakes again because you've had the experience of seeing the mistakes and what that's done, and then you have young kids who have no idea and don't even have the experiences to understand what it could lead to, but they don't want to be held back. And yet here they're caught between kind of like two worlds, and she's trying to almost like trying to be a parent to say walk this way and not that way because this way is wrong. But then also
it doesn't and it leads to a pretty interesting conflict. So
And now
so that's what the movie is basically. That's what the movie and story is basically about.
Does Ming come from, like her character, does she come from a large family, or does she have a family of her own, or is she on her own here?
She's on her own. She's on her own. She actually has a husband who she left behind, who was afraid to come on the mission. He just didn't. He's like, I don't want to go to another planet. I'm not. I you know. And he was willing to die on Earth. So she had to.
Yeah.
And for her, it was about trying to create some sort of an environment where humanity could move forward. And so she has to leave him. So she's bringing that tragedy with her into this situation.
So it's like a double loss for her, losing her her partner as well, husband, and then losing her world, and then being introduced as whole new. It's such a there's so much drama involved in it. Like you can pick on little things that like she could be.
Oh yeah, that's the whole point of it. That it's a human drama. That's the thing. And you know what it is to me. It's a dilemma that has to have faced humanity many times in the past. When I think about different types of people who when they migrated, right? You think about people migrating in the South Pacific, people migrating, we don't even have to talk necessarily. I mean, think about all the migration stories that happened before Europeans, right? There've been these amazing, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, stories that I'm sure have been lost, right? That happened over thousands and thousands of years ago, where somebody said, I'm going to set out and I'm going to see what's over there. I have no idea what's over there, but I'm going to go, and what did they leave behind? What was the challenges they faced? To me, that same story is what we're going to deal with as we go, out into the solar system and ultimately into the galaxy, right? I mean, if we get lucky enough to pull that off and do all that, these are the kind of human stories that we're gonna face. These are the kind of things that are going to be part of our future. So
recently, I watched a I don't know what station was or what studio it was from, but like Scavenger's Reign. Have you heard of that?
You know what? I just heard about that. I'm going to watch that.
Yeah,
it's on Max, I guess, HBO, which I don't know why they changed the name to Max, but anyway, it's the strangest thing. I just don't get it. Anyway,
yeah. So Scavenger's Reign's an interesting little, like the whole concept behind it. It's kind of, let me just bring this up so we can have a look at this, because it kind of reminded, like every time I think of like what's out there, what could happen, how do we, I'd love to be able to journey into space, be able to go out there and stuff. That's right, there's Max, right? So, and you've got this group, and they're aboard the Dementor, and it always reminds me of like Dracula's ship. It was a Dementor, Voyage of the Dementor.
Yeah,
and so here they're out there, the group of people, and someone makes a decision that creates, problems for them. But one thing I really found interesting is the ecosystem of this planet, where everything has a place for everything else, and it just, with everything that was going on, because it's only about 12 episodes, and they just dropped the last 3 recent days, sorry. But it's unique in the sense that I've never seen anyone utilize the fauna, the animals, as the, as the thing, as a what is it called, the antagonist, whereas like usually it's like some body, some person. Of course there is that, but this, there's so many things going on here that's just so crazy. I found it interesting because of the whole space travel thing, because and the way you're talking about Persephone and discovery. For me, like I think you're talking about migrants and stuff like that, and migration of people is one of the biggest things in the world, where you people that never lived in a certain environment have suddenly arrived in an environment, and how do they deal with like the temperatures, how do they deal with like shelter, and people and other people that might be there, or the fauna or the animals and so on. Like you look at like animals that have been extinct.
In the case of this Persephone, they actually go there and they think that there isn't any, with the exception of some very, very simple plants, they don't think there's anything there when they get there. And what ends up being there, I don't want to do a lot of spoilers, but what ends up being there is not necessarily life as we know it, right? That's one of the issues, right? So there are I'll give you an example. There's a forest in Oregon where there's a huge on the west coast of the United States, there's a forest there, and there's another similar organism in Michigan, where these organisms are basically, I think they're like a form of fungi, where they're like everything's tied together, where it's like the trees, everything, all the materials that are there, it's like over many square miles, and it seems like it's a bunch of different stuff, but it's actually one organism.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a single organism, and it's one of the largest organisms on Earth. And it's like, but you would stand in the middle of this place, and you'd think, well, that's a little bit of this, and that's a little bit of that. This is not, but it's actually all a single interconnected organism with just these different aspects to it. But it's one thing, and there's, and it's just like, and I thought that was fascinating. And there's also the idea of, there could be silicon-based life, or life that I mean, there are some life forms on Earth deep down inside. There's some bacteria that they metabolize, I think, like sulfur or something like that. Stuff, right? I mean, they're like completely different than what we do and who we are, and what most of the life on Earth is, right? So, I mean, so one of the things that I thought would be very interesting is if this thing, it's not whatever they discover. Imagine it not being malevolent. It's not evil. It's not mean. It's just existing, and it's hanging out. And then all of a sudden, what if we're the invaders? What if we're the aliens? What if we're the threat? That sort of thing, right? Yeah.
And that's kind of that's been kind of like most of history, isn't it? Human history is that we are the ones who change the environment that we enter into. And but I think is this whole the thing with the forest, is it because over time, because of what area it's on, did it change the muscle? Is that why they thought it was
something may very well have outstripped everything else that was there, Yeah.
I mean, deep seas, like, because you've done Oceanus, and like there's so much things we don't know about the real deep bottom of the ocean, or the bottom of the mountains and stuff like that. And when you watch stuff, like for me, I was watching I think it was Monarch Legacy of Monsters, and the fact that what could be down there could be things that we have never able to survive if something like that happened. And then now you've got Persephone, where they're coming into an entire new planet where where you've got nothing, no compass to go by, really. There's no sort of scientific okay, this is this, oh yeah, that's what that is. And then how did you when you're coming up with these ideas of what to put on this planet, on Proxima B, what do you decide to put in, what you don't decide to put in when you go into writing these stories?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I didn't want to do was create this super complex ecosystem where there was all this stuff going on. I was thinking, like, what if this, I thought it'd be much more, because I would assume there'd be a big debate, right? If you send a probe to a planet and you see like all this life thriving there, and you go, we're going to go there. It's like, well, wait a minute. What does that mean? Like, what would that do to what lives there? What would that do to us? Like, it's actually kind of similar to what you were just showing me with that animated piece, right? Yeah. It's like going to another planet that has this existing thriving ecosystem, and suddenly throwing humans and whatever we bring along into it doesn't sound like a very good idea to me. It's just, I guess it's the same thing as something arriving here, right? It'd be like, what the hell is this? What is this? What's it doing? Yeah. So one of the things that I thought would make this an attractive target is if it's barren, right? The idea is that it has a not entirely breathable atmosphere that we could convert. That through seeding it with algae and things like that, we could convert it into something that we could breathe. Reduce the carbon dioxide levels and that sort of thing. But it certainly has a warm temperature and a surface air pressure and things like that allow us to be on the surface, which makes it a lot easier to live on. In my story, it's a lot easier to live on than Mars, right? I mean, the truth is, even though Mars looks like this, it looks like a desert, right? I mean, it's tremendously cold there. I mean, it's as cold as Antarctica or more so. Yeah. The atmosphere is, it's 1,000th the density of ours, and radiation is a huge problem there because it doesn't have an active magnetic field surrounding it and stuff like that. So, it's Mars is not going to be. There's a lot of people saying that, even though people are talking about colonizing Mars, it's not going to be it's not going to be happening. It's certainly not going to happen as easily as they try to depict it in, as it's been depicted at times, So, and you think about it, that if Mars is the most hospitable place in the solar system aside from the Earth, and it's that hard to live there, I think there's another place which could be interesting, which is Titan, which is one of the moons of Saturn. We could potentially live there, but the temperatures are like, I don't know, a couple hundred degrees below zero. So it's, it's very cold, and it's it has liquid on its surface, but it's like liquid methane and stuff because it's so cold, right? So it does have a hydrology of rain and rivers and streams and seas, but like it's so cold there that water ice, like what we're used to, water ice is like a rock out there. Yeah. So it's very, it has a thicker atmosphere than the Earth. And so you could run around out there without a pressure suit and stuff like that, but you couldn't breathe the air, and it would be a very difficult place to live. Very, very difficult place to live. So one of the thoughts I had for the story is, maybe it would be better if we're really trying to create a target to keep humanity alive and moving, if Proxima B was there and we could actually cross the Gulf of Space and get there. Maybe that would be a better place to try to gain a foothold. So that was kind of the impetus for the story.
Awesome. Now let's talk about like Kevin Anderson and like working with him, because a lot of times when you're writing something, it's usually a one-person job, and then after it's done, then you hand it over to somebody. How much of the work that you have prepared, because you're writing a film script?
Well, yeah, I came into it with him with already a well-developed script, and he liked the script, which is part of why he wanted to work with me. But but what was cool was Kevin had some ideas about the structure that I think made the story flow better. And so, we did some restructuring, especially the first like half of the story. We kind of got to the key dilemma faster, and we figured out how, like for me, I was kind of dragging it out a little bit. He's like, "No, you got to move this up." And, that was something where it was really neat to, well, here's the first thing is I had been reading his books for decades. Right. So I had been a fan of Kevin's work for decades. So it was first off, it was just a huge honor for me to just even meet him in general, let alone work with him. And so when it's actually the first time he and I ever did a Zoom, we ended up talking for like 3 or 4 hours, and we like had to make ourselves stop. We got along that well. It was really cool. So he helped me with some structural things, some character bits, bringing a little more humor to it. Stuff like that. So those were all aspects, but it's like he's a seasoned author, seasoned storyteller. So I had been writing scripts and doing things, and he really respected my work. He liked the stuff that he saw of mine. So it was a mutual love fest. But
I don't usually read like adapted stories, like like you was talking about, like Star Trek, and doing like stories based on that. But recently I've been like listening to audiobooks by authors who have put those out, like the early years of the of the Federation, right, and stuff like that. And then you've got Dune coming out, and the idea that Dune's I guess we're going to have to wait another year for Dune to be part 2 to come out.
Part 2 comes out in March 1st.
Right. Yeah. So I'm of the idea that I need to see it all in one sitting. So I've been waiting for, I'm hoping that they'll send it to the cinema all at once, and we can just sit there and watch the entire thing.
I'll watch the whole thing. It's fun.
Yeah, because it's more fun that way. Because for me, I'm like one of those guys.
I'm sorry, did you say you had seen the first part, or you didn't see the first part?
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones I have seen is like the TV show and the original with Sting in it.
Right.
Like when I was a kid,
1984. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm only like about 11 years old at the time, and I don't have any idea what this is about. But there I am sitting with my dad, who knows everything about this thing, and going, "Oh, this," and I'm like, it's over my head. But then I watched it, probably like a decade later, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Well, it's the best-selling science fiction novel of all time, so it's
exactly
really cool.
I mean, I actually bought one of the lead characters action figure, because I'm a toy collector, but I'm amazed at like the work that goes into adaptation of other people's work. You know, you got to
Mhm.
have like you said, you spent like almost 4 hours, 3 hours talking with them, and you know, getting to know each other, and you know, and then like you already had a whole bunch of work done up. But what's the process like? I mean, you know, to go, okay, how do I work with someone, you know, who I appreciate and know work off and have enjoyed, but when do I say, yeah, okay, this is where I go no, and this is where I go, okay, yeah, this is cool, but also
Um,
welcome that.
well, I mean, I think that, I mean, first off, the good news is he and I didn't have to do a lot of that.
Mm,
We didn't, I didn't, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's my story. So
yeah,
I wasn't gonna do things that would compromise what I thought the story needed. But I,
right,
you know, looking back on it, I can't remember any moments where I was like, Kevin, I'm not doing that. You know,
yeah,
you know, I certainly have dealt with producers and you know, other people that have done that, and they're like, we should do this. We should put a monster right here. I'm like, we're not doing that. You know, it's like
yeah,
it's, you know, and I've had to stand my ground at times. I didn't have to stand my ground at all with Kevin because he and I were on the same page. And I think part of that
mm,
was because, again, we had to think similarly for me to have enjoyed so many of his novels for so many years. You know what I mean?
right,
And he really liked my work when he saw it. So I think we weren't really at odds with each other too much. I mean, at the end of the day, I always feel like it's the most fair. I wouldn't go into somebody else's story trying to change it. If it's their story, it's their story, and they got to tell the story. And if they're like, "Hey, do you want to collaborate with me on my story?" But like, sure, I can
mm,
contribute. But at the end of the day, it's your story, and they have to tell
yeah.
the story they want to tell. And I think Kevin respected that. That's what I wanted to do, and where it is. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you know. I was talking to one of my local friends who's also horror writer, and he's moving on from like writing collected short fiction and horror fiction, whatever, but also young adult sci-fi or new adult sci-fi as they call it now. But he was saying like he's going from writing novels or short stories into short filmmaking, you know, and sort of like the process of that as a being a new person to that to the idea of films and not understanding how things work, and being advised on how how it works. So did you have that process with Kevin as well? You know, because like, I mean, you are a novelist yourself, but the other thing is like where like you mentioned like how you add a bit of humor and things like that. Now, was it because the book, maybe he felt it was serious, or what was the situation there when he said no? Or how about adding this and that?
Well, I mean, I think that he looked at it, and I think that at the end of the day, and it's intuitive. First off, I think that when you're a good writer, there's an
Yeah,
intuitive sense of what's my target, what am I trying to hit, and
yeah,
you say, right, for the audience that I'm trying to reach, that I'm trying to talk to. You know, what are the things that are necessary to get them excited? Now that like the current draft of the script, which I said is very, very different. Like Kevin really
mm,
wasn't involved in that final draft of the script. That I
right,
just rewrote it completely. And it was from learning what dealing with producers that pushed me there, because I actually had for a while attached to the project a producer who did Lord of the Rings with Peter Jackson, and he worked with me
yeah,
for about a year, and he had his take and thoughts on it, which was in terms of and I also think that seeing movies like I saw that movie Top Gun Maverick,
yeah,
and there were some elements in Top Gun Maverick that I thought that was a really cool movie in terms of that was the first time in decades that I really felt like I was watching the kind of movies I used to watch back in the 80s, and you know, where it was
yeah,
like this fun adventure kind of thing, and it was like it was understandable, and it wasn't frivolous, and it was just a lot of
mm,
fun. It was a cinematic fun experience. And I thought, you know, the thing that I wanted to do with the final rewrite I did was to bring more of that energy to it,
mm,
you know, because I realized that audiences are really looking for that. You know, it's like, and you know, there's also what I call the difference. Here's the thing: there's three different types of storytelling, right?
mm,
That you could deal with this kind of sci-fi. You've got TV series storytelling.
yeah,
So, and TV series storytelling can actually go where you're doing multiple seasons, or you're doing a mini series, or whatever it is. But you have so much more room to tell
mm,
stories that go in depth on, you know, we could spend 10 minutes in your office in a TV show, right?
yeah,
Right? In a feature film, we couldn't spend that much time unless that's what the movie was about. We'd have to find a different way to get to know you, because we have to get there. You know, you got
yeah,
2 hours, right? You can't, you know, whereas a
mm,
TV show, if you have 10 hours, 20 hours, multiple seasons, you can explore lots of things.
right,
a novel's even further than that, right? You write a novel, and the novel can spend 5 pages on someone's feeling.
Yeah.
Feeling they have, right? A thought they have, you know, how they start their morning. You could spit, right? All this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like you could spend so much time in a novelization that you can't spend on a TV show, and you can't spend the time you spend on a TV show in a movie, right? You just can't. And I would talk to Kevin, and I would say things like, "Well, this is what I call a TV scene." Right, and we can't have this in here. We can't do this. We can't put this in because it's a TV scene. Because an audience, we can't slow. You have 2 hours, and I've got to tell everything I want to tell in that 2 hour time span. Which is part of why it's so difficult with something like Dune, for example. Right? It's like, if you think about it, I think, what was there, a cut of that film, the 1984 film? It's like 6 hours long or something like that, right? Because it's just a huge story. It's too big of a story to bring down to 2 hours. You just can't do it. And that's part of why they did a part 1 and a part 2 of this, right? Because of just of this movie version. So I would talk to Kevin a lot about that. And that was the one place where, you know, I would say that the one challenge I felt at times was going, this is a TV scene versus, or a novel scene versus a movie scene. And then sometimes he would have ideas, and he'd say, well, we can just do that. And I was like, no, you can do whatever you want in a novel, because you can, it's words. So you can say, and then 1 million troops came over the hill. You know, you can write that in a novel. But if you're making a movie, you have to figure out, how would I depict 1 million troops coming over a hill? Right? How do I do that? And so, you know, I'm always looking at this through the filter of, what's my budget?
That's,
how much money
very important.
And so I can't, sometimes there are pieces of action that just wouldn't work within the, you know, earlier drafts of the scripts, way before Kevin was on board. I had the colony ship wasn't even in the movie. They just you just see the colony ship up there and they fly down from it. But I had so many people give me feedback, like, this is a great story, but I can't care about that colony if I don't get on that ship. So I had to rethink my budget and rethink it to find a way to actually get you on board that ship. And so now the ship is like, and the version that I did, the final draft of the script, is there's even more ship in it. But I found ways to do it cost effectively, so it'll work, you know. And I think there's also been new technology since I first started writing the script, with LED volume and all these things that allow us to do more things at a lower cost. That are, you know. But anyway, to go further, I guess basically where I'm going with this is that making a movie and not making a TV show and not making a novel, they're all very, very different experiences. So the final draft of the script, I think, is much more movie. It's even more movie than what Kevin and I had originally, you know, what we did, because I think there was still residue of novel. And here's where I was going, is it was really awesome, because then he could take all the, what I called TV show scenes and novel scenes, and put them into the book. So the book has all that stuff. It's all in there, but it's stuff that we just couldn't get into a movie. So yeah, so the movie's a movie. That's what I've got. And I also, the other thing that one big change that I did make, going into the final draft of this, is I kind of jettisoned anything that was seeds for sequels and things like that. And I think there are a lot of times that these writers and people create, especially if they're doing some big sci-fi epic or something, you think, oh, you know, I want to do 2 or 3 of these, and I want to set this up and set that up and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be lucky if I get to make one. And I need to put all the best stuff that I can think of into the one as possible. And then if I get a shot at doing a second one, fantastic. And I do have a screenplay that was written for a sequel that, you know, Kevin collaborated with me on. But at the end of the day, the final draft of the script that I'm going to shoot is it could not continue. You would have that could be the end of it. That could be, you know, and you go no further. Yeah.
So. Yeah, it kind of like reminds me of Pitch Black. You know how, like, it's just they just a one complete story, and that was it. And suddenly, you know, everybody liked it, and then, you know, you had a movie based off that, you know, like his film, and then now expand into a huge universe around it. And I think a lot of times, you know, everybody's looking over there rather than looking to get this one thing.
Yeah, get the one thing done and make the one thing the best you can. That's what I think the most important thing is to do. Yeah.
I was actually editing a game, a visual novel game with a guy, and he's thinking about the next story. Like he's looking at the next story, and while he's looking at doing the next story, this one's getting delayed, 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 delayed.
Hmm.
And people are like, well, why should we, and I'm thinking as part of it, as a player, I'm thinking, why should I be supporting this? Why don't I just wait until you get that story out? Because if it's such a big, good story, might as well not even bother supporting you with this one and just go with that story because you don't even believe in the story enough to go, this is the story I want to tell now.
That's
And I
right.
think
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, lose their audiences that way. And I think it's very smart to go, okay, I'm going to do this one story, get this done,
Oh,
and then
well,
we'll go
thank you.
do
I
the next
appreciate it.
story.
Yeah, I just thought it was the
Yeah.
best thing to do. Just do the one. Just
Yeah.
make the one the best I can possibly make it, and everything. So, but the wonderful thing is now we can have a novel that actually has a bigger story and everything too, right?
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with having multiple versions of the same universe, the way the whole thing, could
So,
work.
how far along is the book ready to go? Like, I mean, have you
Well,
got
the
the
book's
dust
written.
jacket
I
done?
mean, this, here's the book right here. This is the book. This is the original
Yeah, let
prototype that
me
we did.
get that
So,
out.
yeah. So this is written and put together. But
Right.
what's happened is we're going to tweak this, and he's
Right.
going to take one more pass through it
Mm.
to make this the best, and then we are going to, and then that'll be done early next year, and then I'll go and record the audio book. I'm going to do the recording for that, which will be
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. So with the audiobook, it's just yourself doing it, or are you going to
yeah, just
dramatize
me.
it?
Yeah, but I'll be taking Kevin's
Awesome.
draft and reading it. Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, like for someone, person like me who's like multitasking all the time. So if I have something there to listen to, it'd be great to just have that there, but then also have the physical one, right? Because
Yeah.
then you go, oh, it's there, and sitting on the shelf, but I actually can listen to it, and then not have a book there going, I've never read it, kind of thing. It just
Hmm.
feels like, because especially if you really are interested in the project, and you know, so with the book. Is it with the publisher or crowdfunding? Because I know you do a lot of crowdfunding as everybody, with all the projects and stuff. Are you going with the publisher on this, or are you just going
Well,
direct?
Kevin's actually a publisher. He's got a
Great,
Wordfire Press is Kevin's publishing company. He has his own publishing
right,
arm, and they've published hundreds of books. So we're
excellent,
gonna do this ourselves, and they can do all kinds of
brilliant.
really nice like leather bound versions and all kinds of stuff. So it's gonna be great, really
I
nice.
mean, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
So, what was the name of that? Wordfire, did you say?
Wordfire, yeah, Wordfire Press. Yep, yep.
Bring that up so we can put that up. Before we go. Now, have you looked at have you plotted out the next book, like expanding, because you're talking about expanding the
Well, I have
universe
a
or expanding your
sequel. We
story?
have a sequel called Valkyrie,
Nice.
and so
Yeah, we
Valkyrie.
discussed that last time. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies for
So
that.
yeah,
But yeah,
Valkyrie is a sequel,
yeah,
and so we'll see what happens. We'll see if we. I mean, I think there's a good chance that there will, no matter what.
yeah,
I think there will be a. I think there's no question that we'll have a sequel novel.
yeah,
The question is, will we? At this point, my goal is make this make this now, right? Make this thing,
yeah.
the best film I can make. So I'm actually in discussions with a producer who is out of the UK. I've had a really, really good response to Persephone in Europe,
Yeah,
more so than Hollywood, actually. I think that the fact
yeah,
that I'm not doing the sort of familiar sci-fi tropes makes it
mm,
a more difficult. Well, actually, Hollywood's very much into, is this existing huge IP? That's where they are. It's like
that's it. Yeah,
taking risks on new things is they're very risk averse, which is why you see so many reboots and remakes and stuff like that.
yeah, and you
So,
also see like the destruction of the studios because of it.
oh,
Just
no
rehash,
question. No
rehash, rehash.
question. No, it's I
Yeah,
think people are tired of it. They don't like it. There's a huge disconnect between the people watching movies and the people making movies. There's a huge
yeah,
disconnect. And at some point it's got spending $250 million on a movie people don't want to watch. That's going to have to stop.
yeah,
It's not a good idea. So I think that eventually, yeah, you're gonna see some changes. But I've had a much better reception to Persephone in Europe, and so we are still looking at. I was actually in Europe back in February, and I met with people at stage in Munich, stages in Warsaw, and then also some people in the UK. So somehow between all that, we're going to put this together, and this will be what we should. My goal is to be shooting by the end of 2024 for a release sometime in 25 or 26 for Persephone. So
now, talking about like filmmaking, right? And so recently there was this article with the director of Eli, the Book of Eli, and Continental, and he was talking about like real filmmakers and why he didn't want to work for Marvel, because he had a list of because they want a director, they don't want a filmmaker. So you're a filmmaker, right? So when you do something, you're okay. This is my idea. This is my concept. This is what I'm writing, and this is how I would like to see it. And when you go to say like something like Marvel, they're like, "This is what we already have. Now, please direct it." And and you're stuck. And so it was really interesting to listen to Albert talk about the difference between a director and a filmmaker in today's filmmaking world in Hollywood. And I thought it was quite interesting that when you said like how it's easier over in Europe than over in America to get the backing for a story like yours. Like I watch a lot of foreign film. So like the one like yesterday I was last night I was watching Death. It's made in Madrid, Spain. And I saw it and I was like, oh, this is great. Then I go and look at the history of the director and go, I've actually watched 4 of his movies already, because it's, I've already enjoyed his movies. So he's the guy who did Wreck, that I think it was a zombie movie. And it was like, I want to go watch the next lot of his because I enjoy it, because he's a filmmaker. This is what he does. He does horror and he does it really well. And I think when you start like, when you take away the filmmaking away from the auteur, I find that this is why we end up with what we end up right now.
No, there's no question. And look, you have a lot of decisions being made by accountants as opposed to creatives. And you also have a lot of people at the studios who have never actually created anything. They work there and they might be making decisions about what films are getting made and that's being produced. And these are people who've never even made anything. They're on, that's very, very difficult for me. Like when you find out that like you send in a script to someone for reading and, to a studio, and you find out that a 22-year-old intern's reading your script, and it's like, oh, okay. It's like, is this, and then of course they're going to bring whatever biases or perspectives they have to it. Right. It's not like, hey, let me read this because I want to make this film. I want this to be good. It's more like, I have no idea. It's very, very difficult. And look, I think there are hundreds of good scripts and writers and directors and people out there, hundreds, if not thousands, that are not even getting a look, in Hollywood. So it's all relationships. It's relationships and it's or it's who is the actors or that's why we keep saying the same big name actors and everything. It's just silly. Yeah. It's silly. It makes no sense. Like Star Wars right now, New Hope, right, from 77. That couldn't get made now. It couldn't even get made. They'd go, well, who's Harrison Ford? Right? I mean, it's like they would only make it if they would have put a bunch of stars in it, and then it would have been a completely different experience. Part of what made Star Wars so cool is that you didn't know any of those people.
Yeah.
And
so you're more about the story and
more about the story,
what's going on,
whatever. You didn't who's in it. You didn't think about any of that. You were just enjoyed the story, And now it's like, well, we got to have Chris Hemsworth in this. I mean, it's like, okay, is Chris Hemsworth right for this? Well, I don't know, but he's got this level of box office and he draws this many crowds, so we got to put him in here. And who can we have like opposite him? Let's get this It's like that's the thought process. It's not, hey, this is a really great story. Let's make this great story into a film. Let's create something. So
that also leads me to like the last year they had like they got HBO Max, whatever, Warner's. They canceled Batgirl, right? The film was finished. They got rid of it.
Oh, Batgirl,
yeah. Then recently, in the last 2 weeks, or even the week now, that's come out that they had a Coyote, right? Coyote, Acme Anime, Warner Brothers Anime, starring, with the voice of John Cena in it, was all done. The
Yeah.
anime was the animated movie was all done, and they were shelving it and taking a $40 million tax write-off of a movie that's probably cost them $100 million or something, and it's finished, and it's finished. And then so there was a kickback. I'm not sure if how much you followed that, but there was a kickback from the filmmaker saying, "Wait, what if? How do we know that's going to happen to our movie? What if we go to work for Warner's, and we do a film, it's all done, it's all ready to go, and they go, yeah, we're not going to show it." And they're a streaming site. Of all things, they have a streaming site. Like in the old days, you'd go like straight to video. Right now, it's straight. You could go straight to streaming.
Well, that's the thing. It's not based on it's an economic decision. It's not based upon audience or creativity or any of those things. It's awful. It's just awful. Now, I mean, I have the feeling Batgirl was probably not a very good movie. I mean, I don't get the sense it was that good of a film. And I also, and I mean, those DC movies, I'm hard pressed to personally think of one I liked, but it's so I can't even imagine what a bad one of those would be like. But so I could understand a studio maybe going, hey, this was really bad, but they probably shouldn't have made the decision. I mean, so many of these films are being made right now. They don't even know how the movie's going to end when they start making it. Right. I mean, they don't even have a full script. They don't even have a full story. They're throwing just tens of millions of dollars at these things. It's just, it's heinous. It's unbelievable. And I think that there's a reckoning coming with that too. It's like, you guys can't keep spending this much money like that. The Marvel's spending $250 million on that film. And that's $250 million of the film. That means that the marketing budget on that could have been as much as 2 to 3 times that, So, So that would mean you have to make like $750 million in order to get their money back,
And they've only made 40 million in the first week. And after the first week, half of that will go, the second week, somebody will go, half the amount might go. So maybe 60 million. That's it. And it's sad, because like you think that's what I think, like filmmakers are just almost like going, you know what, I'm just going to go independent now. I'm just not going to go there. Just like Albert said, why would I go work for them if I'm not going to have a control over what I'm going to put out with my name on it. Right. Because you look at like Rogue One now.
You think like Gareth Edwards? Gareth.
Yeah, because he's just done The Creator, right?
The Creator, which I'm hoping to watch tonight. Yeah.
Same. I'm like, I should have watched it last time, but I didn't.
I wanted to see it when it was in the theater. I just was too busy. I couldn't get there. But it's like I wanted to support it actually. So I'm gonna go. I'm actually gonna watch that tonight. So, you were gonna say Rogue One.
Yeah. So so you see Gareth Edwards, and I'll say that the Rogue One was the only movie that was really loved by the Star Wars fans. And it was like they didn't, he just did what he wanted with it, and it's probably the most successful story-wise.
Well, I mean, there've only been, for me in this new Star Wars thing, and this includes the sequels and all of it. I mean, to me, it's only been Rogue One and Andor that are the only things that actually feel like they're actually connected to Star Wars that we grew up with. To me, those are the two good real stories that were really character driven, really well made, really well. The rest of it, I don't know. I've watched The Mandalorian and I kind of tried to like it. Certainly the first season was okay, but it's just it kind of, and then like Boba Fett was abysmal, I thought, and
I couldn't get through the first, I think I watched about 2 episodes and that was it.
Oh, it's terrible. And then Obi-Wan, that felt like a stage play or something to me. It was so badly made, and it was so it's just sort of, you watch this stuff, you go, why are they making this? What is the point of this? And I know why they're making it, because they want to make money. They want to make a lot of money. That's what they're doing.
Yeah,
and they're milking these franchises to death.
Maybe it's not about making money. Maybe it's just about making content. Because I look like
but why do you make content?
Just to take the space.
Well, they take the space, but they're trying to make the content take the space in order to get people to pay for the streaming service, right? It's like they want people to pay for Disney Plus, so they bought Star Wars, they bought Marvel in order to do that. you know,
Right.
but then they flood the market with all this content, and they also make the content something like, I don't understand the logic of going, hey, let's make this content. If you're going to do it, wouldn't you want it to be something that the audience wants to see, instead of saying, I'm just going to make what we want to make? This is what I want to make, so I'm going to make this. You know, it's like I want to put this political agenda in there, and I want to, you know, it's like, well, these things didn't have a political agenda. That's not what it was about. So you suddenly start cramming a political agenda in there. Fans push back. You know?
But the reason I mean by content is like, I look at it in the light of comic books, where Marvel and DC, they just want the shelf space there, continuity there. So as long as they have the shelf space, nobody else can take that spot. So as long as you know, Warner's and you know, HBO and Disney Plus has got content, nobody else is able to challenge that, because they're the ones who are producing the most. And you're like the person who produces the most, one or two will be hitting. That's enough to make them keep people coming back. But if you know, but if you're just trying to get one, if you lose it, you're gone, you know. But if you've got like 10 and you lose 1 or 9, it doesn't matter, because you're one hit. You know, the whole $1 billion Captain Marvel #1. Oh, it was all this. They had to make that successful, because otherwise nobody would come back for Endgame. You know?
Right.
Because it was very important for them. But yeah, I mean, I always get, you know, it gets frustrating when you realize that there were better movies, right? Way better movies, you know, way back then, where you could actually enjoy and appreciate for what it was, as a one thing. Like, you know, like Rogue One as a one thing. It was very enjoyable, where you got like this entire but then if you've got like filmmakers like Albert, who's not wanting to work with them because of what they're, you know, would cost them, then you'd go, okay, well, they're going to lose all these amazing directors because of that.
Well, you know, but I actually, you know, it's frustrating. Here's the thing. There are people who kind of push back, because like what Martin Scorsese, you know, recently said things like Marvel's destroying cinema. You know, it's really interesting, because like I consider going way back, like the first Superman movie, Superman the movie, right? I consider that cinema. I think that was a phenomenal film. I think that was just great. Yeah, it was really well made. It was real. I don't think that the superhero genre. Well, first of all, that's the problem. It's a superhero genre, right? I think you could make a quality movie about superheroes that's still a great movie. The problem is what Marvel is doing is there's this formula, and they keep replicating the formula over and over and over and over and over again.
That's it.
And it's just like, I think people are getting tired of it. But I also think that the fact that becomes what dominates the Cineplex, or where the movie theaters are, right? And suddenly people, that's what he's saying, if people really listen, is that's what movie going is becoming. Movie going is going to see those things, right? And if that's what all movies are, then, you know, it is destroying the art form in a way, right? Because there's so many good films and thoughtful films and intelligent movies that are being made that don't even get the light of day, because, you know, there's a focus on the big, you know, bombastic blockbuster, you know, and everything.
That's what I mean by content. It's like it's content. It's just superhero. And but like you look at, you know, like we're talking about, like The Creator, totally different, you know, and it just visually looks amazing. You know, and then, I mean, I haven't seen Oppenheimer, but like that's another one on my list. But the whole idea is just about a biography. You know,
no, and Oppenheimer is good. That's a good film. That's a good film. So
and I mean, it must have been so hard trying to fight to get that space in the cinema for this movie about this guy.
Well, that's the other thing that happens though, right? Like you get Christopher Nolan, and Christopher Nolan is it's that star thing, right? He's a star director, so he can get in there and do it. That's and more power to him. Good for him. But you get my point. It's like there aren't a lot of Christopher Nolans, so there are other people who want to make great films, and it's harder to get done. And I really do believe that the Marvel stuff, you know, what's happened with Star Wars, what's happened with a lot of these things, it has damaged cinema, and it has damaged. I think we have an audience right now that's not as media savvy as they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. I just don't think they are. I don't think I see people going, this is so good. I'm like, well, but and it's almost like movies for a lot of people. Movies started in the
10 years ago, 5 years ago,
started in the 90s or something. And it's like, well, there were great movies being made in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? I mean, I really think, for me, the heyday of the genre that I love, I kind of consider it over by the 90s in a lot of ways. As far as the really, really good stuff, it's like I'm pretty excited about the re-release of The Abyss from James Cameron, because I consider that to be kind of one of the last great movies that were made at the time. I mean, think about movies like Aliens. That doesn't happen now. That's not what's even the Ridley Scott stuff that he did. Those things, those weren't anything as close to the quality of what those first two Alien movies were. And as far as it's like, why did they even make them? I don't even personally understand why they were made. So
well, I mean, it's once again, it's about
content,
trying to attract content and trying to make money off it, right? Yeah. And I think because at the end of the day, the studio is basically how much can we, like, what is it called? How much blood can we take out of this rock, right?
Right. Right.
How much can we squeeze out of this orange,
right?
And out of this director? Come on, give me some more. Tell me you've got Terminator 4 on the way. Come on, like they're doing right now with Frozen. They haven't even done 3, I think, and they've already announced 4. We're going to do 4 because it's the only successful thing they've had. So it's kind of, it is sad in a way, because it means that, like, like anybody who's trying to come up and make anything decent is forced out of the cinema onto the streaming or into like directed DVD, because it means that like you can't actually grow like as a director and create a name for yourself as a director. And that's what I love about what you're doing here, because you've got graphic novels, you've got books, you've got short films, you got feature film on the way, you got a novel of that feature film, and you're creating this whole universe around it, but you still have control over that, what goes in that world, and you're able to go, okay, this is how I want this world to look. And I think for people who are tired of that whole franchise, regurgitate of that whole thing, it's so refreshing to just go, here's something new on the market, here's something new that you can be entertained by. If you're so tired by that, just move over this way, look over here. And I find that, like, the independent scene is probably so vibrant with creativity that people are so negligent in not looking. They'll just turn it on and that's it, and that's coming out, okay, we'll just watch that. And rather than going, okay, what else is there that might be similar that I might actually enjoy? And I find that destructive to the creative element, like to the artists out there, right, who are struggling to go, okay, if only I can get the eyes, that means in like another 10 years I could have something else better and something more, like what you're saying with your film, I'm going to put the 1-1 down, do everything into this. But if they're backing for that and support for that, the next one will be easier. One will be easier, because I'm not just saying it's just instant, but it gets a bit more easier to promote, to get the word out, because there's already, say like 100,000 people that already know you, whereas before there was only 10 people that knew, kind of thing, because you've already done that. And it's and I love I love what's being offered by the independent scene, because when you see the tragedy of what's offered by the studio and by the big names, whatever, it's so sad, because you go, well, why just don't you get that $5-10 million and just?
Well, here's where I think it would be fine if you had Marvel style movies and Star Wars movies and things like that. One, they would need to cost a lot less than they do. But if they, and then also, like, they should just be one flavor of what you can get. That's the idea, right? And so then you'd still have intelligent movies, intelligent docudramas, intelligent, as you said, great independent films, all these things. And it would be so cool to have a world where all of those were equated. They were all there.
Yeah.
And yes, you could say, you know what, I want to go see this Marvel. I want to see this superhero movie. But the problem is when the superhero movie becomes the dominant force, right? And it becomes and then the idea that a lot of them, they just aren't that good, and they're just, you know, the same stuff over and over and over and over again. That's what's really messing up the cinema. And I think it's also, again, kind of degrading the media literacy of the audience in a way, right? Yeah. So
because then you just accept whatever's on offer, and it's like,
right, exactly. It's like, well, that's what's out there, so I got to watch it. So,
but I think one thing that's really great, I think, in the scene is that, like, I mean, what's coming up, and which is why I'm, you know, a real, you know, supporter of indie and supporter of crowdfunding, is that you do get to, you know, get seen and get heard, you know, because you're not being squashed by the studios anymore. You know, like, if you make something, it's not like shelved, you know, for whatever reason. Because if you're making something on your own as an independent, you can keep doing it.
Absolutely. As long as you're doing it in a cost-effective way, and there's a revenue model, and there's a model, you can keep making it. You know, the problem is that, again, it may not get the kind of audience or attention it would deserve, because the bandwidth is being taken up by the stuff that's got all the money being thrown at it, right? So when you have studios making a movie for $250,000 and then spending $500 million advertising it, you know, it's a hard one, you know, or spending $250 million advertising. I guess that's what they do. Usually have the same amount, but then they have to split the revenue with the theaters. So that's
and it gets less and less and less. And then it's like, well, what's the point of making a film anyway?
Well, I'll tell you what the point is. It's like all the people making the film are putting the money in their pocket. Right. So it's like, when you say that movie cost $250 million, it's like, well, why does it cost $250 million? Well, it's because all the people making the film, they got those fees. And, you know, so in a lot of ways, their biggest they're on to the next one if they're lucky, right?
That's it.
I think their big concern is, well, we don't want this to flop, so we can keep making $250 million movies so we can get the fees. You know, it's like they're putting it in their pocket. That's got to be blunt. That's what's going on. That's why it costs so much. Yeah.
That kind of brings me to the lady who actually, you know, directed the Marvels, right? And she was like, let me see, she was talking about how, you know, it was all the Nia DaCosta, right? She's describing the critics, you know, what was it like that? The people who are critical of the film as being racist, misogynist, and all that. I'm like, but why didn't the girls go and watch it, right? How come there's no female?
I mean, that's a heck of a thing to just immediately accuse people of being racist or misogynist because they're not wanting to watch your film and you happen to be a black director. I mean, it's just like, it doesn't, here's the thing. The first thing when I see this is I go, why is Marvel trying to be woke? I guess that's the first question I have, right? Which is that, and when I say that, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have diverse characters. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have diverse, you know, production crew and people like that. Of course not. I say that as a person of color myself, right? But my thing first, I would never be out here trying to make a movie. I'm trying to make a good movie. I'm not trying to make a political statement, or I'm not trying to, or if I am trying to make a political statement, let's say I was. If I were trying to make a political statement, that would be what the movie is about. 100% what the movie's about and why the movie's being made. Does that make sense? Which is completely different than going, hey, I'm making this one story, but I'm going to go take it and I'm going to inject all this stuff in it that really has nothing to do with the thing that people love, right? And it's like, and then you get mad at people pushing back on it, going, hey man, I didn't sign up for this for you to go and try to shove my head full of all this stuff. It's like, I just wanted to watch a fun movie. What, you know, I'm not here for your political platform. And I think that it, you know, the idea of calling that sort of toxic fandom or racist or misogynistic stuff, it's lazy. It's lazy. Maybe you just didn't make a good movie. Maybe it just wasn't, you know, it's like, why would we assume I mean, to me, to just immediately make the excuse that the reason why people don't like your movies because they're racist. It's like, well, I mean, that's a heck of a leap. You don't know all the fans. You don't know everybody is watching it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I just don't. I think that's a.
Yeah.
That's not to
It's,
say that there weren't probably some racist or some misogynist people,
yeah.
but my first look would be: did we make a good film? Did we deliver something that people wanted to see? Did are people just getting tired of these kinds of movies? Maybe that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that could be reasons, but to immediately jump to it's that, I'm no,
Yeah, I mean, like,
it's pretty lazy.
if that was the case, why did Black Panther do so well?
Exactly. No, it's no
You know?
different. It's no different than I don't know if you
And
happen to see this, but there was this wonderful episode of South Park where they talk about Kathleen Kennedy and
yeah,
yes,
Pandaverse. Yeah,
fantastic.
brilliant, brilliant.
It's fantastic. And to me, it sums it all up. There's this really cool moment in it where they're they're all talking to the principal, and that moment they're talking to the principal, and the principal like doesn't think it's weird that Eric is now a Black woman. He's like, well, what's wrong with that, right? And they're like, you don't think that's weird? And then he says to them, he says, well, you're the same kind of people. You probably don't like Miles Morales as Spider-Man. And then the kids are like, no, that's awesome. They're like, that was awesome. That is a great story. Is the reason. And I know plenty of people who love Miles Morales, but don't like the quote unquote agenda stuff they're doing with Disney.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people who, it's just the same thing as like, I don't like when I saw Star Wars, like the sequels.
Yeah.
I first off, okay, I was super excited that you had a Black character in there when I saw the trailer. Okay, that looked like he's going to be like a Jedi or something. Like,
yeah, man, I was like so looking forward to that.
Yeah, and you watch the film, and it's like, well, no, he's just some dude who's and then ultimately he's a janitor. And that one moment he picks up a lightsaber, he doesn't even know what he's doing. He gets, but then you get this girl boss, and she goes and she can just fly the Millennium Falcon and like no problem, and actually tell Han Solo how the Millennium Falcon works. It's and that's nothing. I actually like Daisy Ridley, and I actually would be totally cool with a female lead character. Most of the stories I've ever written have had female leads in them. Okay, but I didn't do it because I had a political agenda. I just thought this is something that it'd be nice for girls to have characters they can relate to and see. And I think it'd be cool to tell these stories from a different perspective. I've been doing that my whole career, but I didn't ever do it with like the agenda or the objective was first. The first thing was I want to tell a good story. That's my first thing I want to do. And I don't feel like that when I watch this stuff. I feel like it's all about trying to beat you over the head with something as opposed to tell a good story. Yeah. So
I think they've lost why you have a diverse ethnic character in there, but they just put it in there in place of another character. They don't like explain what their background, their character is. Like Black Panther did, right? You got the whole community, why he was a leader, why he had the power and everything. Whereas if you do it now, it's like, oh, it's just that. It's replacing that.
Right. Exactly. Well, like it's just like okay. So I go back to again when I watched The Force Awakens. Rey did all these things, and there was no like reason how. There was no explanation as to how or why she can do them. She just does them, And it was like it's. I don't know. I think it's kind of insulting to the intelligence of the audience, and it's like there's a way to write these things and do it. If you wanted to do this and say, let's have bring Star Wars back for a new generation and have a female lead, absolutely. But there's ways to do it that are a lot smarter and a lot more thought out. And you know what I mean? Yeah, and it's just it ended up being a mess, and it was just hard to get your head around. And it was just I don't know. I don't think I'd ever watch those three movies again. I have no reason to watch them. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Now that's not because I'm a toxic fan. It's not because I'm a misogynist. As I said, it's not because I'm a racist. I don't like the story. It's like, and I just think that it's like I said, it's easy for anyone to just pop up and go, well, I don't like this because, no, I'm sorry, to say they don't like this because they're racist or they're toxic or they're this, again, not to say that there aren't some, because there are.
Yeah, but you'll always get it.
But there's also the fact that these studios are just not making good stuff. It's just the part, Yeah.
I remember like when The Force Awakens came out, I had my beard dyed in those colors. Like, because you know how you got like the red sand, and it's got the red, white, and black, and I had that dyed because that's how much I love that movie. I thought it was like great. And then come to the second one, I was like, what am I just watching? And the third one was like, this is not Star Wars. You go from like being elated and excited to just, and suddenly did I become a racist from like number 1 to number 3? What happened? And it was, I just thought it was kind of weird because it cost me $60 to get my beard dyed that color, and I was like so excited for it. And then like, oh, well, but it's easy to blame everybody for your failings. I mean, I remember when I put out Incredible, the first, based on the webcomic, I looked at it and I went, I accept the blame. This works as a webcomic. This does not work as a comic book on the shelf. It does not. So I wasted, so I was like, yep, I'm not going to put that out. We sold about a dozen. I'm not going to put that out. I'm going to go again and I'm going to rewrite it. Get another artist, a very good artist, a very good colorist, and we'll do it again and make it like a comic book that you can put on the shelf. And it cost, it cost me $500 or a bit more, but I accepted the blame. I went out and said, hey, this is my fault. I
feel like that's all this stuff. It's like, I feel like I have to listen to, here's the thing. I don't think feedback from everybody is the right way to go, but feedback from the right people is essential. You have to have good feedback from the right people. And that's part of why I've done rewrites. It's part of why I listen and why I change things and tweak them. I don't constantly change them just to pander, but it's more about the fact that I want to tell the best story I can, and everything. So, I've got a movie that I'm doing that's got a female lead, 2 female leads actually. And that's something that I was very, very vehement. And I even had pushback from some people, studios, like, well, you need to make one of them a male, or you need to make them male release. It's like, this won't sell. I'm like, well, I don't care if it won't sell. This is what I'm going to do, and because it's the story I want to tell. And I when I first set out, I said, I want to tell an intergenerational, dilemma between 2 women and an older woman and a younger woman. I want to do this, but they're not. I didn't do it to be woke. I didn't do it to pander. I didn't do it. I did it because it's a thing to do. It's a good thing to do. It's a way to tell stories. It's a way to be. So I don't know, man. It
kind of reminds me of like Ripley and Newt.
Yes. See, that's the thing. It's like when Ripley and Newt, or Ripley in general, there was not, compare Ripley. Or even look at Lois Lane in Superman 1 and 2, right? Or even a great character, Marion in Raiders of the Lost Ark. These are all strong female characters that have nothing to do with the way these female characters are being portrayed in these films. Nothing. It's totally different. Look at In the Abyss when it comes back out. The character of Lindsay, she's a super strong, tough, but it's not some agenda thing. She's a real person. It's a real person. The world is filled with strong women. There are strong women, right? Why can't we tell stories about them? But again, it's not the same as saying, hey, let's go and take this and like tweak it and change it and alter it so that it panders to a certain group, or we have to make sure that there's like a checklist here, and we got to have some of this in here and some of that in here and some of that. That's another thing, right? A lot of these movies feel like it's like, hey, we got a clipboard, did we get one of those? Yeah, well, we got one of those. We got to have one of those scenes. We got to have those kind of people, we have to have all this in there because, if we don't have it in there, then someone's going to not like us. I don't know. What does that have to do with telling a story?
That seems to be the way for everything now. Like anything you see on TV, or any of them are like not specific movies, but because of TV, because you can tell the episodic stories, you got to tell a story about that now. You got to make sure that person's represented, and you got to make sure that's represented, and that's represented. It's like, can I just have a good story about what the story, what the thing's about?
Yeah, I just want to have a good story.
Yeah. But I mean, we're so sort of lacking for genuine human narrative, right? Like, that person, a child behaving like a child, not, behaving like like a man or like a grown-up adult, right? but a 13-year-old's behaving like a 30-year-old, not like an 18-year-old, or
Well,
a woman behaving like a
or
woman.
having using characters who are in their 20s, and putting them in roles that would really be a person who's seasoned and intelligent, who has been through things, who would normally probably be in their 50s, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, why don't we just cast someone in their 50s? Like, why are we putting somebody in their 20s or 30s in a role that should be someone in their 50s? It's really frustrating to me to watch, or reading all these great women, strong actors in Hollywood who are now directing because they just can't get roles because at that age they just won't cast them. So you have all these men that just keep getting older and older and older, and then they cast them opposite these women who are basically could be the age of their daughter, and then that's their love interest. And it's like, but then we can't cast a woman who's their contemporary age, because audience won't like that. It's like, these are choices these people are making, So the funny thing that's so frustrating to me is, like, I can't stand the woke stuff, but yet, I look at all these sorts of things and I can't stand that. I think those things are wrong, right? So it's like, how can we just have a balanced middle ground where it's not like this woke agenda stuff, but it's also not truly isn't sexist, and it truly isn't misogynist, and it truly isn't racist, and it truly isn't homophobic or whatever it is, right? Like, we could tell stories that are good stories that happen to include different types of people in them without pandering. You know what I mean? It's like, why, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like but you got to find a middle ground, and it should be based on, number one, telling a good story. And it's just like the way I look at it, it's like, instead of like finding a way to, hey, we got to get a gay person in here, it's like, why don't you like find a good story about a gay person and tell a good story about a gay person that's really a story about that, instead of going, well, this is actually a story about these straight people over here, but we got to, like, let's shove a gay person in here because we got to do that because we need, because it never comes across as genuine. It doesn't come across as real or genuine. So it's like, I'd rather see, like, let's go tell real stories and make the story about that, and actually get that story out, instead of, let's pander and throw a little bit, it's just, I don't know. So that's just how I see it,
I mean, I come from a multinational family, right? I've got an Indian mom.
Yep.
I've got a European, English dad, stepdad, but dead. And then I've got half Indian, half English brother and sister. Then I have another brother who's not who's with another mother, my mother, but another father. But then I have my dad, who's got two European kids, English kids, with his wife who's passed away now. Now, when in that environment, we've got one of my youngest brother. He's most Indian you can be, and I'm like the most opposite of that. And so is my sister, because we didn't grow up, being around Indian culture as much as he did. When he was young, he was out there. It was always hanging out, even at college and school, because when we were young, we didn't have Indian people around us, young kids around us who were Indian, apart from ourselves. But he did. And so he became more Indian than us. He actually speaks the language way better than us, his older siblings.
Sure.
And so when I look at something like, when I was looking at, gosh, what's it called? Big Bang Theory, right? After 15 years, there was no change in that single character. I was just like, I'm out of here, because, like, how can you just stereotype this guy for 15 years and have no changes? Where's his American accent? Where's his American way of doing things? Where's his dressing?
Well, it's the same thing. Part of why I'm doing the documentary I'm doing right now about, you remember we talked previously about The Eagles Landed. Like, I'm going to go in there and I really want to talk about my background and my childhood growing up and having, African American, Black parents who didn't fit sort of racial stereotypes. And there's a whole story. They aren't the only ones. There are plenty of people out there who worked hard, who were, scientists, engineers, worked in all these different trades, and we don't talk about that. We act like that those people didn't exist, and I'm tired of that. It's like,
because those stories don't sell, right?
Right, exactly. It's like we want to sell stories about the gang members and the drug dealers and the this and the that and all the stuff, and how they need our help, and how bad it is, how terrible it is for all of us. It's like, well, it's not that my parents didn't face adversity. And it's not like there wasn't racism and problems that were part of their story. But at the end of the day, they were a success story in that they figured out ways around that, through that, and still succeeded, and still were able to bring, you know, help me and my sister become successful people who went out into the world and were able to develop our own measure of success. That's a real story. That's an American story. That's a world story. That's not something that gets told because it doesn't sell, you know. And I'm tired of it. It's like, it's time to have those stories out there too, you know. It really is. And it's really interesting because I've had some places where my publicist has tried to pitch me and said, you know, here's this guy and here's what he does and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's almost like if it was like, well, here he is and he's doing this stuff in the inner city and, you know, he had to struggle with this and that and everything. And you know, say I spoke a certain way. And, you know, there's a new movie coming out called American Fiction about this Black author and who he's a super articulate author. He's written these great books and he can't get them sold because they aren't Black books. And so you got to look it up. It's called American Fiction. It looks like it's going to be fantastic. Jeffrey Wright.
I heard about it.
Yeah.
And I think, who was it? I think it was, oh gosh, Robert My Burnett was talking about it. And I think a couple of other people were talking about it. And it's like, do you have to put on a costume of Blackness, what everybody accepts, to be able to, you know, promote yourself? And it's like, this like the world has been marketed a certain view of the Black culture, and that's the only one that we're getting. We're never getting like, it's like Bollywood, right? The only view of Indians you get is the dancing, right? You just get dancing. And it's like you get this cheerful, colorful saris and dance moves, and that's your thing. But it's not like, every family struggles in their own little way, and it's just so sad that you only market that, like the lowest denominator. Sadly, I don't want to use that with, like, that's the only thing I can see it as. It's like, you know, you'd only market Indians as like curry eating, dancing, music.
Well, the same thing has happened a lot to Asian people. It's just it's like it's martial arts, or it's you know, right. I mean, it's like, well, it's not. It's like a fraction of Asian people are involved with martial arts, right? But
I know my Korean friend.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having martial arts movies any more than the Bollywood movies, but it's just, it goes back to the exact same thing we're talking about what is the portrayal, what is this, what is the massive amount. It's like the idea that there's got to be other voices, other stories, other approaches to this, right? I mean, you know, it's like, it's funny because I think about the kind of like when I've seen some of this stuff. Like I think about a couple of these shows, a specific show. I'm not going to say the name of it, but there's an episode where I just noticed watching this show. It was a sci-fi show out of England, and they suddenly, there's this character in a wheelchair. And the character in a wheelchair talks to this stereotypically gay character, right? And then you know, it's like it's all
all the colors, it's got all the nuances.
Right,
I have a gay friend.
It's like I'm like, man, I would love to see why don't you do a show about the person in the wheelchair? Why don't we actually tell a real story about the person in the wheelchair? Actually, have you guys ever really talked to the person in the wheelchair? And is there a story we can tell about them? Or is it just, hey, you know what, we should put a person in the wheelchair in this because, you know, we want to make sure we get that demographic. Or you know what, even more importantly, we want to make it look like we care about that demographic, or we care about those people, right? You know what I mean? That's what it feels like to me. It's almost like disingenuous. It's virtue signaling.
Oh, it's 100%.
You know?
You can feel it, like, right?
And it's funny because some people, they would be like, "Well, you're going to sound like someone who's right wing." I'm like, I'm not right wing. I'm not trying to be some right wing dude. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to not be right wing or left wing. It's just like, how can we just be like smart human beings who do the right thing, treat each other decently, treat the planet decently. You know what I mean? And
the way we used to, right?
The way we used to, exactly. Like not even, people can't even have an argument anymore. They can't even have a discussion. You talk to some of these people who are, you know, extreme right or extreme left, they can't reason through an argument or a discussion. You know what I mean? It's suddenly just, they start screaming and yelling, and then suddenly you're either a racist or you're a this or you're they'll label you and then shut you down. and they're done.
Yeah.
You can't even have a conversation. You know, and
There's
it's
no,
like I mean, one of the things that I want to say to people is they're like, well, we're being strong. It's like actual strength actually derives from the ability to face these things, to be able to hear other opinions,
yeah,
to be able to try to change someone's mind, to be able, right? It's not just hanging out in your own silo with everybody who sees it exactly the way that you
yeah,
do. That's not the real world. And I think social media has made that worse. You
yeah,
know, these people living in
100%.
silos and, you know, but it's
Yeah,
going back to what our discussion's about. It's really
yeah.
impacting media. I think it's
It
really,
is.
really impacting media, and not in a
Yeah,
positive way.
it's making us think that like this is what they like. You know, like if so, this is what the gay person is like, and like they should be this way, speak with this nuance, and the hand movements, but like this, and it's like this is stereotype, and all they're doing is like being stereotyped. It's like saying, well, everybody, every Black American's from the ghetto, right? They're
Right.
all killers and they're all criminals. That's what they are, because that's all you see on TV and entertainment. And then
Mhm.
you go like, well, all the Indians are like this, and all the Asians are like this, and it's like, look, they're just human beings, you know. And
Right. And there's just as much diversity among those groups as you know.
yeah,
It's like when someone would say, like, I remember I was growing up and people would say, you talk white. It's like, well, okay, well, what does a white person talk like? Because there's all kinds of different ways. I could probably I do a lot of accents. I could do
yeah,
5 different accents of American white people
yeah,
that I don't speak like. I think I just kind of speak like a middle American person. You know, it's like
yeah,
this is just kind of a Midwestern American human
yeah,
accent. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not trying to talk white. I'm not trying to talk black. I'm not trying. This is just speaking English as
right,
I grew up with my family and how they speak and everybody else. And they were black people and they spoke like
yeah,
me. And we just were just speaking the way we speak. It wasn't like,
yeah,
hey, you know, we should try to sound like white people. That was never said in my house. That was never a thing. As a matter,
yeah,
I guarantee you, none of us. That wasn't a thought. It wasn't a thought. You know.
yeah,
But this idea that like, well, but if you're black, you sound like this. It's like,
mm,
well, where do you get that from? That'd be like saying to somebody, if you're white, you should sound like you're from Appalachia.
yeah,
You know, you're white, you should sound like you're from Boston. If you're white,
mm,
you should, you know what I mean? It's like, what is that? You know, and
yeah,
it's been a huge thing, and it's been something that's it's been a problem for decades. It's been a problem for
yeah,
decades. The part that kills me is that with all the work we've done to
yeah,
make the world a better place, to try to help people get past this stuff. Now you have the very people who should be benefiting from it turning on, you know, they're flipping around, and
yeah,
you know, it's very similar to what you just showed me from the director of that film. You know, it's like
yeah,
that's not helping bring us together.
yeah,
That's just spreading us apart, you know, and
yeah.
it's very sad. Very
I
sad to
mean,
see.
when you get to a level where like you as a you know, say like an Indian director or whatever are able to be in a major worldwide thing,
Mm-hmm.
you can't turn around and, you know, disrespect everybody who's allowed you to be there. They've gone to pay money to watch your film, you know, and like I think we had because everybody suddenly will hate you because, you know, when you do that, like look, it was like Renee from like Snow White thing, you know, that she was out there and everybody just instantly, everybody, all, you know, all sides, no, you know, no left, whatever, but all right, just everybody hated her for it because like just her behavior, you know, and
Well, the thing is that when you look at, okay, so well, first off, if you look at what Disney was doing with it, okay, so here's the thing. It's like, why not just make something new?
yeah,
Right? Okay, so if you want to make Snow White, why would you go, well, we're going to make Snow White, but we're not going to have it be a white girl.
yeah,
Okay. I'm like, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess you could do that. Like, but why? Like, what is the, like, if you're like, hey, we want to make a movie with a Hispanic girl in the lead, just do that. Like, let's come
yeah,
up with a new fantasy story that could star that person. But then when she gets out there, and then you find out, you see the seven dwarves, and now the seven dwarves aren't really dwarves, but
yeah,
they're all these diverse people of color and whatever. And it's like, well,
yeah,
what? It's just so blatantly obvious that there's an agenda. It's just so blatantly obvious. And then you hear things she was saying out like about, you know, well, I mean, I've seen the video where she's calling Prince Charming a stalker and stuff. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, I don't really think that that's the way to promote this story. I don't think that's what this is supposed to be. It's like, so just, okay, but if you want to make a movie which that stars this person that is in this guy, just make up something new. Just do something new. I don't understand why they don't do that. I do understand why they don't do it, because they want to use the intellectual property with the name Snow White, because they know that that's going to actually attract more people than creating some brand new thing that, you know, that could have all the things that they want in it. Just make something new that works. I don't know. But the first thing would be get a writer, get good writers who can come up with a good story, and then say, hey, our goal right now as Disney is to have more diversity. Awesome, sounds good. Right. How do we do that? Right. Well, I don't know if the way to do that is to say, let's go take these things that people loved and cared about, and then just start recasting and shoving all this stuff in it. Well, obviously you're going to get backlash to that, because people, you know what I mean? It's like I feel the same. You know, to me, it's like I'd rather have rather than making Superman black, right? I'd rather just make a new superhero. That's what who's black. That's 100%. What I would do. You know, that's how I would do it. It's like why it's I don't know.
It's lack of creativity and wanting control. You know, it's like wanting to control the narrative of how we put this out there, so that you see us as good people, that you're on the right side of, you know, of history by if we change Superman to black. Like, I mean, I look at, whenever I'm doing a story or doing a character, I go, why would I make that character that ethnicity? You know, then if I'm making that character that ethnicity, then I must also have their parents be certain ethnicity, right? That correlates to them. And then I must also look at their background, their history, their culture, and bring that into why this guy is now this guy. Right. So I think a lot of they don't do that with this.
Right. You know? Right. No, I get it. No, and I'm just not a big fan of it. I don't know. Yeah. It's like, and it's not because I want to emulate or watch white characters. It's not that at all. It's just that it's like, I just think it's like there should be room out there in the world to create new characters. Black Panther, when Stan Lee wanted to create a character that would appeal to young black kids and also open the minds of young white kids, he created Black Panther. He created Power Man. He did. You know what I mean? He did that. You know what I mean? It's I don't know.
And now it's just like, well, let's just put somebody else in there with the same mantle, and it's like now it becomes just like, and
it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense. Now, at least like when they did Spider-Man with Miles, that was some sort of alternate reality, or was something where they gave it like its own, you know, and it worked. It worked really well, and it made sense. But Peter Parker was still Spider-Man. It wasn't that they said, let's get Peter Parker and let's make him Asian. Yeah, I mean, you know, and so if someone pushes back on that, that doesn't make them immediately a racist. That's just such lazy thinking to me.
That's basically it. It's laziness and creativity.
Like, I just don't get it. It's like, well, you're not automatically a racist because you go, well, Peter Parker was always this guy. I don't understand why we're changing Peter Parker into this. It's like, well, why don't we find a different way to do it, or find some, you know, that's all. So,
well, there's the same thing before. Like they were going to turn, Josh Whedon or somebody, Jeff Abrams, whatever, was going to turn Hellblazer, right, John Constantine, into a black guy, rather than Papa Midnight, who's already black, right? Do you remember the movie with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah.
They were going to do a whole series, and like, yet Papa Midnight is one of my favorite characters in that series because he's so, you know, was played so well by I can't remember the actor's name, but it was played so well.
Who was a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't Lance. It was gosh. I'll bring it up soon.
Oh.
No,
gosh.
Yeah, it's let me just grab that because Constantine. And now I'm so glad that they're going to do Constantine 2, right?
Right.
And with Keanu Reeves, with those characters from that as an Elseworld. Digimon Hanzo.
Hanzo. Yeah. Hanzo. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
And he was brilliant. Just man, because I've read all these comics. It's one of my like 300 issues plus all the others, and you know, and I own some of those comics, and I own the original series appearances and all that. And I'm like, you had Papa Midnight. If you wanted to do a show, do Papa Midnight. and all this voodoo stuff and all this spirit stuff, all that is already there. You don't need to, and then you can have him up here whenever you want, but you don't have to change, Constantine into a black guy.
Right.
And then, and then they were going to change the reason why he got to be him. The late girl who was white, also a black girl. And I was like, dude, you could tell it totally.
Yeah,
that's already
it
there.
Doesn't make sense. There's no. And again, I'm not saying this because I don't want to see characters of color. I of course I do. But I just want there to be a reason. It's like just make it work based upon the realities of whatever it is we're doing. So.
Yeah, especially when you got such a prominent character who was featured in the main movie, right?
Right.
And as a very important person of that, and they make sure that you realize that Papa Midnight is very important, to this universe. And all you have to do is go, okay, we're going to make a Papa Midnight series, and we're going to bring Hansu back in as the lead, and now he's got a whole series about him, and now it's real,
Right.
And it's about his culture. It's about African culture, the voodoo side of things.
Yeah, I don't know why you couldn't just do that. Just do that. Yeah, do that.
But it's lazy, isn't it? It's like
totally
we only know Constantine. We got to use Constantine. That's all we know. It's like
people know Constantine, and that's what they're going to come see. So we got to make. But you know what? We want to make sure that it feels like it's Constantine for now, and it's Constantine for the 21st century. So let's make him black. It's like, well, but then it's not Constantine. It's like, well, just. I don't know.
Yeah. Then you got to rewrite his entire reason for being black, right? The culture, the people he surrounds himself with. Whereas you got Papa Midnight, and you know why he's black.
Exactly.
And you know everything about him. He owns the club. He owns this whole amazing store, and everything goes around him. And I'm like, please, could have just given us a Papa Midnight series. That's all.
Yep.
But it is the laziness. It's the control. That the only thing that's good that everybody will like is if you change a white character to a black character, or if you race swap to any other character. But it has to be white first, though. It's just the weirdest thing. It's like it's got to be white first, or people won't like it. It's like, but you could just create amazing new stuff, and build on that. That's why I think Black Panther works so well, because
I agree.
Everybody loved it.
Awesome. Black Panther's awesome. Hey, I gotta wrap up.
That's us. We were going to say about 1 hour, but we had such a awesome discussion.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I gave you a little more time. So
So, guys, please check out futuredude.com. And also, when the book comes out next year, please support it. And of course, the website you want to go to for that book is right here, woodfirepress.com. So thank you, Jeffrey. I really enjoyed having these discussions with you. And we did go.
You kind of got me up on my soapbox today, but that's okay.
But I mean, I think it's it's important for auteurs to be out here, like yourself, to be like really, pushing against the dross that we see all the time. And it's good to, see the different things you're doing. You're not just concentrating on one thing. And I think the more people see the different things that they can be entertained by, books, graphic novels, short films, a feature coming on the way, and all that that's there that people can enjoy, not just like, oh, it's one and done, but you've got a variety of amazing stuff out there, which, I really love, and I can't wait for the books to come out. And then also, like you said, audiobook, right, as well. So people like, who don't have the time, they can actually, buy the audiobook and stuff like that. So thank you. I really
appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's great. I love being here. I'm really happy to speak with you. Yeah, no, very much so. So, yeah, awesome.
Thank you guys for joining us today on Plungecast, and especially on Plunge Pop, where we, as you see, we have amazing guests, amazing discussions, and please do support Jeffrey out here with the many things he does. Please look up futuredude.com, and wherever you are, be well. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and be safe out there. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.